You said something about Mexico. Did you ride down there?
Yes, I did.
Cambios de dirección.
There's a rodeo association or a bull riding association down there, Cuernos, Chuecos. They're kind of like PBR, and they're a big deal down there. And Ford sponsors them, Monster sponsors them, and they would just roll out the red carpet for us. Those folks packed the house. There wasn't an empty seat in the joint. It was cool, man.
So bluegrass.
Bluegrass.
So is your family?
Yeah, my family. White House Harmony had a band, and man, they traveled for the better part of my childhood. Matter of fact, my granddad gave me a 1954 Gibson for one of my, I was probably 21 or 2, and gave it to me for my birthday. It was his first guitar that he played in the band with, and it's herringbone trim on it. And
You still have it?
yeah, I still got it.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's a sweet guitar, and big, kind of a thicker neck on it. And
Yeah.
so anyway, I grew up with them, and they recorded several CDs over the years and traveled. They played in Branson, and I think they did about 14 years. Six Flags used to have a Western Heritage Days.
Yeah.
And they played over there for about 14 years, and it was just the whole family. It was my grandmother, my papa, my 2 aunts, and 2 of my cousins.
Whoa.
So anyway,
So the 2 cousins that live in,
yeah. So
as we were just talking about.
yeah, Haley Simon.
Okay.
Yeah, she lives in Decatur, right there off the square, and then she still plays some Texas music stuff around the area. And then Jordan Sinclair, he was their bass player, and he does some things here and there. But anyway, I come from a musical family background, and I kind of went off on the rodeo bull riding trail and track. And anyway, they always kind of wanted me to play the guitar, and I picked it up a little bit when I was older, but anyway, bull riding was my deal when I was younger, so I just kind of stuck with that and headed that direction.
Well, the music thing and the rodeo thing, they go hand in hand.
Goes hand in hand, yeah. And going down the rodeo trail, picking on the guitar, right? So, and that's kind of when I started college at Vernon. That's kind of when I picked up the music deal. Wanted to kind of learn the guitar and how to play the guitar, because obviously you have time when you're in college. There's time, right?
Yeah.
In between classes and whatever else you're doing, and so. My roommate, or not my roommate, a buddy of mine had a guitar that he'd keep down in his room, and so I'd sneak down there and grab it, and he had a chord book, and I started learning chords, and then
Okay.
so anyway, it was.
So did you end up playing with the family at all?
No, I'm not on that level.
Really?
My papa learned how to play by ear when he was a kid. He grew up in the mountains of Arkansas, and always had an affinity for music, and so he picked up a guitar and learned how to play by ear himself. And they started that band. He could pick and grin with the best of them. They'd go to those festivals, and I'd sit around and listen to him play.
Did you say this is your dad?
No, it's my granddad.
Oh, granddad.
Yeah, he's passed away now, unfortunately, but great man. I really looked up to him a lot. My dad also plays. He plays the guitar and the banjo and sings, and he plays with some of the local cowboy churches. And then I'm sure you're familiar with the Greenwood Country Store.
For sure.
Yeah, where they have catfish on Saturdays and stuff. And my dad will go out there and play sometimes. They call themselves Lonesome for Fame. It's just kind of a joke, they just have fun,
Yeah.
But they're good, man. My dad, I grew up with him picking on that banjo, and he'd get going on that thing, and them fingers, them picks on his fingers. And anyway, it was cool, growing up in that, and all the family get-togethers. My family always played music and sang, and they can do a mean rendition of Happy Birthday, probably the best Happy Birthday. So anytime someone's birthday, they had a harmony group. Obviously my grandmother and my 2 aunts would harmonize, and anyway, so they'd kind of put us to shame a little bit when they were singing.
Yeah.
They'd harmonize, and anyway, a lot of fun growing up with that.
Yeah, definitely. Did they rodeo?
Nobody really rodeoed in my family, with exception to, I think my uncle and them kind of, played with bull riding a little bit. My dad, his big joke was that when he was younger, he got on one bull, and that was all it took. He went out to the Cowbell. I don't know if you're familiar with Cowbell Indoor Arena. It was in Mansfield, very historical arena. A lot of guys got their start. A lot of guys got on bucking bulls over there when they were kids and stuff. And it was a weekly deal, and they had practices. And it's now I can't think of the name of that high school. Maybe Legacy over in Mansfield. It's right across from Whataburger. But, man, I have some good memories as a kid going over there, too, as well. But that's where my dad got on his first bull, his first and only bull. And so, anyway.
And so you didn't have a lot of family in it. You had to teach yourself, or how?
Yeah. No, I got into the rodeo deal kind of, my family's country. Like I said, my family grew up in the mountains of Arkansas. So I grew up with stories of my granddad, and my granddad telling me stories about my relatives, and with mountain lions and running crosscut saws in the logwoods and skidding logs out of the mountains with mules and fighting and this moonshine bunch. And and I grew up going to the river up there. My family still has a 40-acre place up there, the original home, my papa's original home place. And so I grew up there. I grew up going up there, but I was born in Irving. And so I was born in inner city and lived in Grand Prairie. Grand Prairie at the time was pretty rural. And
that's funny.
Yeah, pretty rural. It's not anymore, I don't think, obviously. But my whole family actually lived over there. So kind of, there was a country upbringing there. And so I kind of, fell in. I started out school in Keller. My mom and dad were split up. But anyway, I started school in Keller with my mom and them, and then ended up transferred over to Irving when I was in 6th grade. And I fell in with a group of kids that were, they wanted a rodeo. They talked about getting on bulls and all this stuff. There were some guys in that group that, had tried it, at Cowbell and everywhere else. And so one of the guys had a bucking barrel in his backyard, and I'll never forget, it was just right down the street from our junior high. And so a group of us went down there one day. We were getting on that bucking barrel, and next thing I know, back then, Grand Prairie had some guys that had some bulldogging pens and stuff, and they were just happened to be kind of in close proximity to where I lived and where a few of my friends lived at. And so we just started going to these bulldogging pens, and these guys they'd run steers, and throw them, and then at the end of the deal, they'd let us get on their lead steer or whatever, and it just kind of slowly built from that, and I had a couple of friends that one was a team roper, Wes Moss out of Decatur, and then Canberra Blessing, Canberra Smith now, but they were rodeoing pretty heavily in pro youth and actually kind of going, you know what I mean? And I had, at the time, I was smitten with Canberra. She was, one of my first girlfriends, and
Sure.
And she said, well, hey, I'm going to these pro youth rodeos, and she said, well, why don't you enter, and you can go with us. And I said, hey, that sounds great. And then, so anyway.
So you were 17, 16?
No, I started riding steers when I was 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was 10, and I rode bulls.
Oh, yeah. Y'all were going to youth rodeos.
Yeah, youth rodeos. Yeah. So I started out riding steers, and I rode steers for, I don't know, a year or two there. And, well, actually, tell you what, that first year, they started out putting us on just kind of bulldog and steer type stock. And about midway through the season, they said, hey, we're going to switch over to what we call peewee bulls. And that freaked me out a little bit, because it's, it officially became a bull.
Sure.
It wasn't a steer anymore, right? And so anyway, we started getting on peewee bulls, and just stuck with it, man. I spent about, I don't know, 15 years altogether, often, riding bulls from youth rodeo all the way through professional rodeo. And anyway, just really enjoyed my time riding bulls. I was talking to my dad about this the other day, because I remember being a kid in Irving, Texas, Grand Prairie, inner city. And, I grew up going to, my mom and dad and them, they'd take me, or my family would take me to rodeos, the old Traders Village rodeo. I don't know, they used to have a rodeo out there. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. But as a kid, I was probably, 4 or 5 years old. I've got pictures over there up against the fence looking, watching the rodeo and stuff. And so I grew up kind of with the influence, we'd go and watch it, and I always kind of had an attraction to the bulls and
Sure.
the big, everybody, all the kids do, right? And anyway, so I had that influence, and anyway, I fell into it.
Well, you were saying you were talking to your dad about it. Was it like the idea that, what specifically were y'all talking about? How you got into it, or?
Oh, yeah, yes. So, yeah, I was talking to my dad, and I said, I remember being a young kid and just, I couldn't, I was just wanted to be a cowboy so bad in whatever way I could. And obviously, I didn't have a ranching cowboy background. I didn't have the opportunity to get out there and do that because we were living in Grand Prairie. I was around a few horses and things through Canberra and them. And but man, I remember sitting on the back porch and listening to old Chris Ledoux cassette tapes, listening to all those songs that were about rodeo living and being a cowboy, and man, just dreaming and watching the NFR. Back then, there wasn't a lot of rodeo on TV, kind of like there is today on, because of the Cowboy Channel and all that, which I think it's great for kiddos and everybody else. But back then it was TNN, and Mesquite Rodeo was pretty much the most standard rodeo production on TV. Man, I'd watch those old mesquite rodeos, and then when it was NFR season, I'd stay up late and watch the NFR, man, and just sit and dream of being good. I just wanted to try to be good, I just wanted to get one road probably at the time, tired of getting stuck on my head, but which happened a lot, and but I'd listen to those old Crystal Dew tapes, and man, I was just eat up with it, And I played all the traditional sports. I played baseball and soccer and basketball and karate, and I tried a little bit of everything growing up. Baseball was kind of always my deal. I really enjoyed playing baseball till I was about, I don't know, probably 6th grade, somewhere in there. And I played a little football in junior high and stuff like that, but rodeo just stuck with me. And I think it's a mentality thing, and it tried me, and it was challenging. And once you do get on a bucket animal and you ride a bucket animal, you kind of have that that fire in you, it's like it just kind of sticks with you. And
how would you describe the feeling of getting on one?
I'll tell you, man, I have over the years, man, I obviously 15 years riding bulls, I got to feel that feeling a time or two, riding. I get them rode and all that stuff, made some good bull rides and stuff. But after I quit riding bulls, you kind of a little bit, you miss that feeling, so you start trying to find things to replace it. And I've been skydiving and that sort of thing, and man, it's just, there's nothing like riding a bucking animal and being a bunch of points and getting off. You hear that whistle blow and you get off, and you got the crowd cheering for you, and then you get there behind the bucking chutes, and your buddies are shaking your hand, telling you good bull ride. Your heart's pounding, you're scared to death. Anybody that tells you they're not scared is lying, you know what I mean? At some point, and so you just did this real dangerous thing, and you're scared to death, and you turn that fear into something positive, and there's this positive outcome. And man, there's just nothing like, I guess maybe you could probably relate, you go on stage and you got the crowd screaming for you, your heart, I don't know if your first time out there on the stage, maybe, but that would be something similar.
I still get nervous.
Yeah, there you go. You get out there and you do something difficult, and you get to the end result, and it's a positive result. And I don't know, it's just hard to explain it. I mean, but
I'd be curious if the nerves almost get worse with something like bull riding or something really risky like that. What I do, there's no risk, like it's not like you're rolling the dice when you get up on stage. Like riding a bull or anything, skydiving, there's a roll of the dice element to it that it's almost like, if you haven't had it real bad yet, it's like, it's going to come.
Well, there's always the danger factor, know, and that's part.
Is that what the fear came from?
I mean, it's, it just depends, I think, at certain points of your career. I think there's probably different things that cause different levels of fear. Sometimes it's fear of just you're getting on a 1,500-pound bucking animal. That's you get on them, you sit down on them, slide down on them in the buck and chute, and they're shaking. You can tell they're adrenaline. They're as hard as this table. They're just so muscled up, and they're shaking, and it's fixing to be a battle.
Yeah.
And then other times, obviously, every time, there's somewhat fear of failure. You're out there in front of you.
Right.
It's you. You know what I mean? Everything is on you, on your shoulders. And everybody's watching you sitting there in the stands. And again, you go from small deals to big deals, and it's humbling to get too jumped out there in front of several thousand people, or in front of your buddies even, or in front of your girlfriend. I don't know, but
it hurts worse to get your ego bruised.
Yeah, sometimes it's a very humbling sport, man. That we always used to say you're only as good as the next bull you get on, and that's the truth. And it's really like that in every aspect of life, and it's in everything you do. And that's honestly, more than anything, I love the competition aspect of it. I loved conquering, difficult animals to ride. I like the winning money part of it. The winning money part of it was secondary, in my opinion. It came as a result of everything. But man, rodeo taught me a lot as a young man. Rodeo taught me a lot about life, and taught me a lot of life lessons, how to, get up and dust myself off and keep on rolling, and fight through difficult things, how to, manage money and pay fees, and, how to survive, kind of, you're out there on the road, and you're a young man, and you learn how to be independent, and deal with adversity, and which is probably the biggest thing, and teaches a lot of lessons, man. And so anyway, but then, I really had rodeo has really blessed me, and good Lord has blessed me, obviously. But I was able to compete as a contestant for many years, and made a bunch of friends. I rode bulls down.
Did you say you pro rodeoed?
Yeah, I pro rodeoed for a little bit. I filled my permit my freshman year in college, and I filled it at North Texas State Fair Rodeo. I won the bull riding over there.
Oh, cool.
And so
I'm playing on the 24th.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Cool. My son's riding sheep over there this year. He's a returning champ from last year.
Heck, is he really?
Yeah. I won the mutton busting last year, so we got.
What night are they doing the mutton bust?
So it's a progressive deal. So they have a like a qualifier deal that they lump all the kids into 2 days. And last year, I think there was about 160 kids that entered.
Good grief.
And so they had like 80 kids per day. And then they take, I believe it's 10 per day, based on ride, how long they ride, if they make the whistle or whatever, however they do it, And then there's a semifinals perf that's usually during the bull riding performances, like the Miller Lite bull riding or whatever they call it now. And so then they take, I think they take 5 from each night of that to the finals. And then there's 10 total in the finals, and then they select a winner, basically.
So obviously they do it almost every night.
Yeah, so there's 5 performances, I think, in mutton busting, but it's all usually towards so they get to ride in the qualifier deal is over in one of their show arenas. And then if they qualify out of that, then they get to ride in the big boy rodeo. And so, which is a cool deal for the kids,
But he won it last year.
Yeah, he won it. He won him a big old dinner plate buckle, and he was in the Wise County Messenger. And ironically enough, when he won that buckle, the good folks at Justin Brands had invited him over to also participate in mutton busting over at the Fort Worth Stockyards Coliseum. And so he went over there and actually won one of the perfs over there too. So he had a big trophy and a buckle, and so he was, he's Mr. Mutton Buster at that point. So
getting on bulls, is that something you'd discourage or encourage, or just kind of impartial to if they want to do it? Then
I'm not going to discourage it. Rodeo, my dad and I were having this conversation the other day, but I'm not going to discourage it. If they want to ride bulls, then I'm going to give them the best opportunity and teach them how to do it the right way and with the right equipment, put them on the right quality of stock.
Right.
Because I think that's a difficult thing. There's a fine line there in today's world of bull riding, because a lot of the bulls these kids are getting on are they're obviously the genetic deal has just become a huge deal, and there are some buckers out there. It's like some fire breathing dragons. You know what I mean? And they start them so young, and so I think Cody Custer, our previous world champion bull rider, he's a big advocate of that, putting kids on the right level of stock. And my oldest boy, he got on a couple of calves, and there was a guy that brought some Holstein calves, and he got on some of those, and they're big, but they're easy to ride, easier to ride. They have a pretty standard bucking pattern, and those dairy calves are pretty docile. And it was just, I think those are really good for young kids to get on as they're transitioning out of the sheep riding, or if they're starting, on the calf riding deal, or even some of the kids that are interested in maybe getting on a steer or two. Just make sure that you're getting on quality stock, and that's the same for my kids. If they want to ride bulls, or I'm gonna make sure they're getting on stuff that that fits their skill level.
Sure.
Back when I was getting on, we didn't really think like that.
Yeah.
We just showed up at a place, and the bull riding deal was different back then. Well, there was times that I paid to get on bulls, and now I think guys pay people to get on bulls. And
shoot, down at the Stockyards rodeo, like Fridays and Saturdays, I think they pay you $200 just to get on.
Yeah, I think they just
they had one guy that covered, and he just won all you got to do is just cover. And
yeah.
But shoot, you can just get on for $200.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a totally different environment than I was accustomed to when I was getting on bulls. Is when I was a kid, we would pay to get on. We'd show up at these guys' bucking pens, and they would be like, "You're gonna get on whatever we run in here," and they may be 2-year-olds, and they may be going to touring pro deals or whatever. And so we just did, and it wasn't getting on 1 or 2. It was getting on 6 or 8, and call it what you will. Sometimes that probably wasn't the best thing, but that's the only way we knew. I grew up, like I said, and went to, when I was getting on steers, my parents paid for me to go over to Don Gay's bull riding school. Donnie Gay, 8X. And so I went over there to Mesquite, and I'll never forget him telling me, he said, all of us. He said, you don't learn how to ride bulls by getting on a bucking machine, by watching it on TV. He said, you learn how to ride bulls by getting on bulls. And so I took that to heart, and just that's what I did. I learned how to ride bulls by getting on, and I'd show up at a practice pen and I'd get on bulls.
I've heard some guys talk about riding jumping horses.
Yeah.
Helps a lot.
Yeah, and you can do things to condition your groins and get your balance. There's some guys that will get on a lunge, put a horse on a lunge line.
Sure.
And, get up off the rear end and, start you can do things to condition yourself.
Sure.
And that obviously helps. And I'll tell you, some of the best guys going down the road, especially when I was going, some of the guys were in our group that rode the best, grew up either roping, or I had one buddy that rode race horses. He jockeyed not jockeyed them, but exercise race horses out of the track on the side to make some money. And he grew up doing that, and he was sticky.
Yeah.
But he grew up doing that.
Yeah, he just had a pretty good seat in general.
Yeah, he just had a good feel for it. And so, there is a lot to that as well.
Sure.
Yeah, balance and.
But gosh, you throw in that mental component.
Yeah.
Of just the fear and the danger. And
yeah.
It's like the whole game changes.
Yeah, and that's the saying is that bull riding is 85% mental, 15% physical. And
I've never been on. It's something I've always wanted to do, but now I'm at the point too that it's like the margin of error is like I'm giving up a lot.
Yeah.
To just like even go for it. So
yeah.
It's like the moment has passed, but I still just even think about the idea of like just like getting my chest out over one.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I could. That's also why I don't really want to get on because like I don't think I could fully commit. It's just the idea of really just putting myself out there. Like, I don't know.
Well, see, that the mindset changes when you start getting older. And that's what happens with it. That's the natural progression or transition phase there. But, guys they have to start paying a few bills, maybe have a family, have some things, a music career or whatever. And they go, I don't know about this. When you're younger and you don't have anything going on and you're just like, hey, man, you can throw caution to the wind.
I'll tell you what, I'm a pretty good couch jockey, though. I mean, if those guys aren't putting in the effort,
I look at him. He looked at the ground, you know what I mean? What is he doing,
I have to just sit there and my wife will just look at it.
Yeah, I can't believe he did that.
You get on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Nah,
You said something about Mexico. Did you ride down there?
Yes, I did. And that was a great experience. And so, I was thinking about on the way over here, how I ended up down in Mexico. So my dad, I'll tell you, my dad worked for a long time for Minyard food stores, and they had a carnival food division. So I was raised around a lot of Hispanic people. So
in Maynard?
No, for Minyard.
Oh, Minyard.
Minyard food stores, the grocery.
How do you even say it? Is it Maynard or Maynard?
Menard.
Oh, it's not even either
Menard.
Menard, that's right.
I believe it's Menard. Don't quote me on that.
I'm sure somebody
will go like, it's not Menard.
It's technically 1872.
So anyway, I've always had an appreciation for the Hispanic culture and, those folks in general. And so when the opportunity came up, I feel like, there was a couple of buddies that probably just said, hey, man, we have this opportunity to go down to Mexico. Do you want to go? And I was like, heck yeah, man, let's do it. And not really knowing what to expect. I just knew I was going to old Mexico.
What year was this?
02, 03, so it was pre-cartel wars and all that stuff, and it was such a different place, man. And there's a rodeo or a bull riding association down there, Cuernos, Chuecos, and that literally translates to crooked horns, and their logo is a bull with crooked horns, And they're kind of like the Mexican version of the PBR, and they're a big deal down there. And Ford sponsors them, Monster sponsors them, and matter of fact, the guy that owns the association, he came up to the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo and met me up here. Him and his family came up, and my wife came over, and we hung out with him a couple of days. I hadn't seen him in years, but we stay in contact. And I've got a bunch of friends still down there, and hadn't been down there in years, but we communicate through Facebook. And
what's the name of it again?
Cuernos, Chuecos.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're online, and
so they're still doing their thing.
Yeah, they're big.
How long were you down there?
Man, I spent about a summer down there, off and on. We'd go down there a couple weeks, come back home, that sort of thing. But
it was fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. And we went down there. They would just roll out the red carpet for us. It was just awesome, man. First event I went to was in Querétaro, which is down south pretty far, and they had all their events inside these old bullfighting arenas. And man, it was cool. Those folks packed the house. I couldn't even give you a number of people that place would seat, but there wasn't an empty seat in the joint.
No kidding.
And it was just, they were on fire.
How different were the bowls?
Same.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the quality of the bulls and all that stuff down there it's the same as up here at the United States. And I think a lot of those guys down there, and they all ride good. Those guys ride really good down there. They're very, very consistent. They're all about their bull riding down there. But some of those guys get a little nervous about coming up and competing in the U.S. for whatever reason. But I'll tell you, those guys could come up here and do their thing and dominate as well if they wanted to.
Yeah. So when you left, I guess, so that would have been like 02, 03. Were you still in college?
Yeah. So I started college at Vernon College and on a rodeo scholarship to ride bulls for Bobby Scott. And I started college. I graduated high school in 2000. And so in 01, 02, 03, somewhere in there is whenever that would have been technically my sophomore. Vernon was a junior college. It still is, I think. So I ended up spending 3 years at junior college because I wanted to rodeo, and Bobby said, "Hey, we'd like for you to stick around a third year, and we'll make sure you're taken care of." And we had an awesome team at the time, and we won the men's and women's national championship in 03. And set a record in the NRA.
Hell yeah.
And Cade Swore and Jackie Crawford, Will Lowe, and some of those.
Oh yeah, y'all were stacked.
Yeah, we were stacked, and we had our way at the region. You know, all of us either won our events or reserve champs, and then we just kind of cleaned house. And I'm not trying to be braggadocious, but it was just one of those teams that it was kind of a once in a lifetime team. And,
Killer.
And we had a blast, and we won, and we did our thing, and a lot of great memories from those years. But yeah, it had been 02 or 03, and so that was in the course of me going to college there. And we'd go down there, and a group of us, and we'd drive all over Mexico, and we'd go down there in our own personal vehicle, drive it down the middle of Mexico. There's a highway that runs right down the middle of Mexico, and
man alive.
And we'd take our own personal vehicle down there, and they'd load us up, and we'd go to these bull ridings and stuff, and they'd put us up in people's houses and feed us and put us on TV and radio, and we'd sign autographs at fairs. It was cool, man.
It wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
That's crazy. It's changed that much that fast.
That much, man. Yeah. I never, you hear the stories of old Mexico, and especially back then, my dad had been down there. He worked in corporate America for 26 years, so they'd go down there sometimes on travel and stuff. He just told me to be careful, but, it wasn't like it is now, where I feel like if you drove your personal vehicle down through there, I feel like somebody would probably take your car and maybe do away with you.
It's pretty sketchy, man.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd trust that, but those folks down there in South, obviously the border of Mexico is different. My wife has family that lives down there on the border. There's obviously those border wars that go on for all of that stuff goes on down there. But when you get a little further south, I think it's, depending on the state you're in, I think it's a little different.
Yeah, definitely.
And so those guys that have that association, they're kind of native to Querétaro, the state, and a lot of their family lives in Querétaro City, and they say it's pretty chill down there.
There's a little part of it too that it's like, you could go into Dallas, and if you're looking to get yourself into some trouble, you're gonna find it, right?
Yep.
But it's kind of. Yeah, I understand that it's a little bit more dangerous than it used to be historically, but if you're in some sketchy places, you're probably going to find some sketchy people.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, and there was times like we went to Mexico City one time for a bull riding, and it was in a bar, and the folks told us, "Hey, do not leave this bar, because just don't, stay with us, and you stay within the confines of this, and then if you want to leave, just let us know. Maybe we can all go together or whatever." But obviously, they were telling us, hey, it can get, if you get off in the wrong alley over there, you might find yourself in a jam. So I think that's probably a lot of the way, because, I know people that go down to Mexico and still experience the culture and stuff, and they come back and they're fine.
Yeah.
Now, I know some other folks that actually have had some problems with the cartel folks, but that's a whole nother story for them to tell.
Yeah, I got a buddy that leases like a bunch of hunting land in Mexico, and he's an outfitter.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, he's out of Colorado.
Okay.
And,
yeah.
And he's got some pretty wild stories.
There's some, and I'll talk to you about it off the podcast here, but you may know the story, but there's a couple of guys I know that actually got kidnapped and all that stuff down there in Mexico. So anyway, they're from our area. So, but anyway.
You made it out.
I made it out alive.
You didn't get kidnapped?
No, but I was with a bunch of the guys, the association guys down there, and inevitably there's always someone that was affiliated with the Mexican government in our group. And so I think a lot of the time we were kind of protected, padded, you know what I'm saying? They kind of made sure that we didn't get ourselves into a spot, and made sure that the people that may put us in a spot knew that we were, made sure that they knew that we were guests of theirs.
Yeah, for sure.
So
did you make it out of your rodeo career like relatively
yeah, were you going to ask relatively sound?
Uninjured and sound, yeah.
You know, honestly, I feel very blessed that I did for as long as I rode bulls, and I kind of grew up rough anyway. You know, I've been knocked out several times and had several, you know, lots of concussions. My big deal was soft tissue stuff, tearing biceps and ligaments and those sort of things. I didn't break a lot of bones. I broke a collarbone and fractured my nose one time and bit through my lip and that sort of stuff. But a lot of mine was soft tissue damage. And matter of fact, I still got a torn ACL on my left knee from when I was a junior.
Yeah.
And but the very first time I ever got knocked out riding a dirt bike when I was in 5th grade.
Oh, the irony.
Yeah, the irony. You know, so I'm like, I've had my tooth knocked out, and it wasn't even knocked out riding bulls. It was knocked out by a dog biting me. So I've got this weird.
Your tooth was knocked out by a
my
dog?
front tooth, yeah. I was down petting him, and he jumped up in my face, and I guess it was just, he bit me in the perfect way, but it grabbed my front tooth and pulled it straight out of my gum, root and all.
So he bit the tooth out?
Like he just he went to bite at my face, and I really don't know how it happened. I really don't know exactly if his mouth was open and grabbed my tooth and pulled it down, or if he hit it with his nose. But I was leaning down petting him, and my buddy was preparing some food for him.
Yeah.
And he jumped up and boom, and it pulled my tooth,
Gosh, dog.
root and all, out of my gums.
Was it a healer?
It was a Doberman.
It was, huh?
Yeah.
A freaking dope. What'd they do?
So the dentist actually took my tooth and pulled it back up in my gums, and then ran a bar across, and then bonded it to my other teeth that were up in my structure. And
What'd they do with the dog?
I don't know. That was my buddy's dog, and you know the funny thing is he got that dog. So I had some friends that grew up in the neighborhood with me, and he got that dog when it was a puppy, and I was around the dog when it was a puppy. Weird. And then they ended up moving that dog, and I don't know why, but they had moved it over to like a car junkyard or something. And so we were over there. He said, "Yeah, I want to run by there and feed him." And I mean, my buddy was old enough to drive, 15, 16 years old, and I was probably 13, 14. And
you weird with dogs now?
No, I'm not. I've actually had a couple of run-ins with dogs. I had an Akita jump up and grab my side one time. And
boy, and you were like, these are some dogs that are no joke.
Yeah, they handled
a Doberman and an Akita.
An Akita. I saw one the other day. I don't know where we were. My wife and I were somewhere, and this couple went walking by with we went to Canada. We were in Canada, and they went walking by with an Akita. And I looked at that dog and I went, man, I know that breed of dog. Yeah,
it's a wolf.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I was in, I don't know, 3rd or 4th grade or something. And I'd walk by this yard, and this guy was building a section of the fence, rebuilding a section of the fence. He'd put up some construction fence that, that flimsy orange stuff, just to kind of fill the gap to keep the dog in the yard. And I went by there, and the dog was barking at me, and I probably was antagonizing the dog and just hitting the fence or whatever, and he said, "Enough of that, brother."
Gosh.
He jumped over that little deal and chased me down there. Of course, I took off running like an idiot, like you're not supposed to run from a dog. And anyway, he caught up with me and jumped up and grabbed me on the side. And,
good God.
And then turned around and ran off. And so I think the owners were real concerned that, we were going to, press charges or, whatever. But it wasn't one of those deals. It was my fault. I was just a little punk kid,
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway.
I got bit by a Chihuahua the other night. It was pretty intense.
Those Chihuahuas, man, they'll get after you. Yes, they will. They run the roost, man. You'll see those little Chihuahuas around a big old, Great Dane or something, and they're calling the show.
Oh, for sure, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So
how did you end up getting linked up with the Forward Stock Show? Because, I mean, that's kind of like one of your main, I know you do a bunch of stuff, but that's one of your main, you're the director of the Forward Stock Show. Right?
Yes. So I'm the rodeo director of the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo, and that's actually my full-time job.
Okay.
So I'm there at the office Monday through Friday year-round. Obviously, during the show, I'm there without any days off for like 40-something days straight, but 15, 18-hour days. But so, it's a combination of my background and obviously being up and having my education. So I started out school and rodeoed at Vernon, and then you get 4 years of eligibility when you're rodeoing in college. And so I did 3 years at Vernon and 1 year in Canyon at West Texas A&M. And so I moved up to Canyon for my 4th year of eligibility and rodeoed for Mark Eakin up there, who's now the coach of the Tarleton State. And I think they've been a big powerhouse over there now. But so I stuck around there and got my bachelor's and started my master's degree. And ultimately, I kind of had a long way of coming around back to this, but I moved back home with about 6 hours left of my master's degree, decided I was going back to Amarillo to finish up, got up there and got hired on with the Tri-State Fair and Rodeo. And it's their big fair and rodeo up there, the annual fair and rodeo. And I got hired on kind of a blessing. The right people got me in for an interview and taught me how to, I never had written a press release. And they said, well, a portion of this interview, you are going to have to write a press release. And so the person that had gotten me into it goes, have you ever written a press release? I said, I've never written a press release a day in my life. But I've always kind of I like English and stuff and writing papers and stuff when I was a kid. And I've always kind of been long-winded anyway. So I figured, well, sure, I can write a press release. So she taught me the structure, kind of that pyramid structure to start with the bulk of and then narrow it down, right? And so I went in there and wrote a press release and I said, okay, you're off to round 2. And so they ended up hiring me as their marketing director. And so I dealt with, my job was really kind of all-inclusive. It was some sponsorship stuff and managing the newsletter that went out, the website. We had a gala at the time. Blake Shelton was kind of on the come up, and he was the entertainer that performed for our gala that year that I was there. And then I did the media and public relations as well for them. And so, media, interviews and stuff when they come onto the grounds of the fair and just a little bit of everything, really. It was a small office, good folks up there. And so I worked for the Tri-State Fair and Rodeo for a year and decided I wanted to move home. And, obviously the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo, I grew up coming to the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo and having at least a year of experience in that, in the entertainment business and large event business. I just made a phone call and said, hey, I'm coming home and I'm the marketing director for the Tri-State Fair. I'd like for y'all to consider me. And, again, it's back to relationships and people that come into your life and, present those opportunities and help you get to these opportunities. There's a lady, Denny Deedy, there in Decatur that worked for the Wise County Messenger that put in a good word for me. And, the communications manager at the time reached out and said, hey, we need a guy that knows how to do social media. And that was when Facebook and all that was just getting going.
Yeah.
I said, well, yeah, I know a little bit about social media. And so I was kind of that age range, Yeah. And so they said, well, come on.
You were the first ones to get Facebook. Yeah, it was like when Facebook was hip. You had to be in college, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, matter of fact, that's exactly how it started. And I remember when I had a Facebook page whenever I was in college, and you had to have a college email in order to create an account.
Yeah, my oldest sister's about your age. Yeah, I remember she went to TCU for a little bit.
Okay.
And I remember her coming back, and it was like we all wanted to get on Facebook because all the college kids were on it.
Yeah, yeah, all the kids you looked up to had it. Yeah, man. So anyway, yeah, I came. They hired me on. They said, yeah, we've got I don't know, they may have had like 350 followers at the time on their page or something, or 1,500. I think it was 1,500. Man, that first year of the show, it grew exponentially. Uh-huh. And the general manager goes, hey, at the end of the show that year, they had kind of let all the temp employees go. We have some temporary employees that come in and work in the office and do office-related duties during the show. And there's always kind of a time where those duties kind of come to a conclusion, and we say, see you again next year. And they said, see you again next year to all the temp employees. And I was still sitting there. So then the general manager comes up to me and goes, hey, we'd like to hire you, and we'd like for you to be our first social media manager. So I got hired on full-time to manage all the social media. And then as a course of that job, I ended up managing all the social media, created the first app for the show, and then a lot of the digital technology, helping with some of the screen design during our rodeo. We had started to incorporate, we called them the poor boy ribbon boards. It was just our version of a ribbon board, but it was like four small screens down on the lower level at Will Rogers Coliseum when we were still there. And then we come in, we built a custom, we called it Little Hoss, because you got Big Hoss over at Texas Motor Speedway. Yeah. And my general manager called it Little Hoss, but it was a big center hung screen. And that we came in and built out of video walls. And so managing some of that content and helping design some of that content, which I I'm not the greatest at, but I'd build it in Photoshop or something. And now we have an official.
It's cool, but you learned a lot of that stuff just on the job.
Yeah,
a lot of that technology was kind of getting created like right when you were doing it.
I talk about that. The social media deal was so fluid at the time, man. It was like ever changing. It was like
still is.
It's constant. I'm out of it now. We have a girl that does it now, and she keeps up with all that. She's got the TikTok and all that stuff. But at that time, it was so fresh. I mean, there was landing pages on Facebook that you had to know how to code.
Still had MySpace back then.
MySpace was back then. Twitter was there. Then there was Instagram, and there's all these different. I don't know. I had to go back and look. There was just several of them that you had these. What do you call them? Scavenger hunt type social networks where I don't know. There was just all of these ideas out there, and we were trying all of them. And I learned how to HTML code, and I learned how to use Photoshop, and never had any previous experience. And so anyway, that job is kind of how I got my foot in the door with the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo. They saw a need, and I just happened to be.
So when did you become the director?
I officially became the rodeo director, I believe, in 20. Don't quote me on that. 2020, I believe I did. But prior to that, my title was assistant operations manager, and I was doing all the same stuff that I'm doing now. Yeah. But officially, by title, I became the rodeo director around that time frame.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I did the social media deal for about 5 or 6 years. I've been with the show 14 years. So I did that social media deal for 5 or 6 years, and then became the assistant operations manager, which really that job involved predominantly rodeo-related things, but anything. We've got 22 full-time staff members that operate the show year-round, and we all assist each other with a variety of things. So, we all play different roles at different times, and obviously my baby is the rodeo, 25 performances in 23 days.
Yeah.
And which, by the way, January 12th through February 3rd, Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo. Let me get that plug in there.
Yeah.
And 25 performances in 23 days. So I'm over the management of all of those, and all of the personnel and the Cowboy Channel broadcast and the intricacies of all of that. And we have production meetings prior to every perf. We have run shows that are built out by the minute for everything that happens during the rodeo, and got a great team of people, man. The best team that I've been around since I've been around rodeo, and man, it's just had a lot of learning experiences, and my boss has really put me in a lot of positions that I was like, I don't know, man. It's just one of those adversity things.
Yeah.
He puts you out, and he's pushed me out there and said, hey, do it, get after it, and so I feel very fortunate, very, very blessed to be running one of the largest rodeos in the nation.
For sure.
In the world.
How long has it gone for?
The show started in 1896. That was the livestock show portion. And there's debate about this, but, the official rodeo by term was in 1918, and it started over at north side of the Coliseum there. And we transferred our event over to Will Rogers Coliseum in 1944. That was kind of during all of the World War II stuff.
Yeah.
And they were utilizing Northside Coliseum, I believe, to house airplane parts during that time. And so, moved over to Will Rogers Coliseum, and it's over the years, it's grown obviously in scope and size. And we've got some leaders around the city that have really been huge benefactors and made that possible for the community. And it's a great event, man. There's just so many people that show up out there that have so many stories from their childhood or their dads, had grew up there or what, there's just so many stories. And such great people that come out to the show, and it's a family-based event. I love to see all the people come back and that have been coming for years. We get told all the time, hey man, I've been coming out here since I was 5 or whatever, and I've been to every rodeo performance since I was 5 years old, and I'm 56 now or whatever. You're like, well, that's amazing. Yeah. There's that level of community support, and
it is huge. I've played I
saw that Rodeo Roadhouse.
Yeah,
live Roadhouse.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, that's
everything y'all do out there is so cool.
Well, appreciate that, man.
And now that it's in Dickie's, dude, it's awesome.
Dude, it took our deal to another level. Obviously, Will Rogers Coliseum has its, has the ambiance and the historical value, and A lot of great memories, a lot of great rodeo heroes, step foot in that arena. A lot of heroes in general, just business leaders and dignitaries and all of that. So, and I've been at every rodeo performance since I've been hired, since 2010. I've stood at every rodeo performance since 2010. And, but there's people who have stood at twice as many of that, as well. So that buy the boxes and they come in and all that sort of thing. But whenever we transitioned over to Dickie's Arena in 2020, man, it's just such a different experience. And it's just a time in our history where it was necessary. And Dickie's Arena has just been a phenomenal venue for Fort Worth overall, outside the parameters of our rodeo as well. Obviously there's concerts and events that come in and out of there all throughout the year. I think they were the 4th highest grossing venue in the world.
Whoa.
As nominated by Billboard magazine.
Really?
Last year, they were just nominated again as a top venue in the world for the seating capacity of 10 to 15,000.
Yeah, it's actually kind of weird. It's not as big as I thought it was.
Man, but
because even the whole NFR thing, that kind of tripped me out where they did it over in
Globe Life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because I was like, why didn't they just do it at Dickie's? But it wasn't big enough, apparently. Or I guess that was with the distancing thing too. But even what the heck, Thomas and Mack in Vegas.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't realize how big that arena actually is.
Yeah, it seems like Thomas and Mack seats 15,000 or something.
Man, I think it's close to 20.
Is it? It maybe is.
But I didn't. When I'm in Dickie's, it feels huge.
Yeah,
it is big.
Yeah,
but I guess in this relation to how many people they're packing in for the NFR. I guess I just thought it was like.
Well, the cool thing about Dickie's is that arena was designed for rodeo because we're the anchor tenant there, and the chairman of our board, Mr. Bass, Edward P. Bass, he was obviously very influential in Dickie's Arena being constructed in Fort Worth and managing that whole process. And, he obviously has an affinity for our rodeo and designed that arena with rodeo in mind. And so...
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so it's probably the only venue that I know of that was built with rodeo in mind. Not any other venue in the world that I'm aware of was...
There's like some... hockey arenas that I've been in where, I mean, it's kind of random, but like in Tampa specifically where the Lightning play, it's very steep.
Yeah.
The way the seating is, like it's just straight up and down. You're just looking right down in on top of it. But it's a hockey arena.
Right.
And it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes when they do that in like a basketball gym, or basketball should be more like that probably.
Right.
That's kind of the way Dickie's feels a little bit. A little bit more over on top of it.
There was a considerable amount of thought put into Dickie's Arena. Obviously, you can see that when you walk in, with all the native grasses and things that, Mr. Bass has really got an affinity for native grasses and plants and that are native to Texas. And all of the landscaping around Dickie's Arena is all native stuff. So if you're there next time, you can look around and go, that stuff is all native to Texas, mesquites and all this sort of thing. And so that level of detail, down to the stuff with what the bathrooms felt like and looked like, how nice they are. And he wanted everybody to have a good experience there. And but they also did some studies on the distance of the top row of Will Rogers Coliseum down to the dirt level.
Yeah.
What the distance was. And it's pretty comparable.
Really?
If they're in that hole. And so while it does, there's obviously more seats in Dickie's Arena than there's in Will Rogers. I believe that Will Rogers is about 5,400. And in our configuration, it's 9,300 and 9,400 in rodeo configuration in Dickie's Arena because there's different configurations. So they can get up to around 14,000, I think, 15,000 for concerts and that sort of thing. But for our deal, 9,300. But it's so intimate, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Even for a concert.
Definitely. I still haven't been to a concert in there.
Really? Oh, man, you got to
Oh, actually, I take that back. I went to for Post Malone.
Oh, you did?
I did.
All right.
Zimmer Kubota, Sam Zimmer.
Yeah.
Do you know him?
Yeah, we deal with all the Zimmer folks.
He's my homie.
Yeah, they're good folks.
Yeah.
They are good folks.
So Sam, we all went out to dinner one night, and he has a box there at Dickie's.
Okay, cool.
Guess.
Yeah.
So we ended up going to Post Malone, but Sam's like, I think he was going to give some of the tickets away to some people that work for him, like his daughters or something like that. Yeah. And then one of my buddies knows Sam, and he's like, dude, we'll go.
Yeah.
So it was my wife and all them, and Sam's like, we're out there at dinner, and he's like, now who are we going to see right now?
Posty.
So he sat there about like a quarter of the way through post.
Yeah.
He was like, all right, dude, I got to leave.
I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, right?
Yeah, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what he's saying.
Yeah. So, that's awesome. That's what Dickie's Arena provides, in my opinion, is just there's such a diverse range of people that come in and out of there. You know, concerts. I mean, K-pop, for instance. We had a K-pop concert.
For real?
Yeah. We had a K-pop concert during the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo over at our old auditorium last year. Never heard of K-pop until
they had it during the stock show.
Yeah, over in our old auditorium. And my general manager came to me and he goes, "Hey man," he said, "What do you think?"
That's Korean pop.
Korean pop. Korean pop. And he goes, "What do you think about having a K-pop concert?" And ironically enough, I stay in contact with the technology director over at Dickie's Arena, and they have a big K-pop concert over there, at least one a year. And I asked him about it. He goes, "Man, he said they pack the house for this sucker." Yeah. And we want to, at the show, we want to appeal to everybody. We want to have an opportunity for somebody to come out and enjoy our show in whatever capacity it may be. And so he came to me and goes, "What do you think about a K-pop concert in an auditorium?" I go, "Hey, cool, let's do it." And so we had one. And my wife happened to be out of the show, and she was walking around the exhibits hall, and she's like, I told her there was a K-pop concert that come to the auditorium, and she goes, "I saw those guys." She said they were running around the commercial exhibits area with a camera.
They probably loved it.
Yeah, and they were shooting they were getting little sound bites and doing all that stuff. And so anyway, I think that's great. And Dickie's Arena brings a diverse range of things to Fort Worth, and from monster truck rallies to rodeo to,
Rodeo is an interesting culture because there's you're always wanting to grow and grow the industry. But it's so steeped in tradition. And that's what it comes from, and that's what makes it so cool, is because of the history and the tradition. At the same time, you want to be I guess accepting of people coming from different areas or different walks of life and stuff. Because I grew up in Decatur, but I wasn't. My parents, weren't into horses, and nobody rodeoed or anything. And it was my brother-in-law that taught me to shoot horses, so that's how I even entered into all of it. And I dealt with definitely some people that, if you didn't come from a rodeo family, or your freaking grandpa didn't own 3 sections out in West Texas, it's you didn't really belong.
Yeah.
Which isn't cool, Yeah. It's some people, they don't have the opportunity. They got to learn it on their own.
Yep.
And if you exclude some of those people, it's never going to grow. At the same time, I am big on tradition and history.
Sure.
And you got to respect the tradition to a certain degree. And so I've always found that to be an interesting dynamic with rodeo.
Yeah, that's the thing about our shows. We want, again, back to, we want to make everybody's experience that comes out there. We want them to experience the Western culture, the industry, in whatever capacity they want to experience it in. If they want to come and they just want to watch a rodeo and they want to buy a ticket, we want to give them the best production possible. But then, if they want to come out and see the animals and do that sort of thing, there's that opportunity too. But, we're just trying to create that connection to the Western industry, to keep it alive, because as these kids get further and further away from the ranch and the farm, back 100 years ago, people were either farming and ranching, or they were maybe one generation removed, and now we're 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And it just continues to kind of get a little further and further away from the farming and ranching lifestyle. So there's a lot of people that are maybe kind of, believe it or not, it's hard for me to imagine, but, there's a lot of kids out there that don't even realize where they get milk from, you know what I mean? And so there's these things that educate these kids about, and I know that a lot of the livestock folks do a really good job of that. We have a milking parlor out there we bring a dairy cow in there, and they talk to them about how to milk a cow, and this is where it comes from, and this is where the milk in the store comes from, and so, or this is where the meat on a pizza comes from, or this is where leather, all that.
It was interesting. You have to explain some of that stuff.
Yeah, it's you hate it, but if it weren't for events like ours and the people involved with the volunteers and the companies that get involved with our event, a lot of that education for those folks may go by the wayside, which then, as those kids grow into adults and assume political roles and leadership roles and doing whatever they're doing out in the world, if they don't have a connection to that, or don't have a remembrance or a memory of that sort of stuff, then they may not be as prone to advocate for it, right?
Totally. Or might go the opposite direction and be against it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even with the rodeo thing, a lot of it's just educating people on what the heck's actually going on. A lot of people get weird about it, roping a calf or something like that, because they just don't really totally understand what's happening. So if you ostracize those people, they're always going to be against you.
Yeah.
And you can't please everybody, but Dude, it's pretty wild. Even like I have, like just with the internet, how you can connect with people that you would never think that you would.
Yeah.
Like I have songs that like I covered a Rihanna song, and it like it went pretty viral on Instagram and stuff. And like I get DMs from people almost every day,
No
like
kidding.
Iraq and Iran
Man,
and Japan,
the power of music.
and and also it is the power of the sort of like Texas cowboy thing too.
Yes,
It's fascinating
absolutely.
because they'll send me DMs and they're just like, it'll be like a picture of my album cover or something. They're like, yeah, Texas cowboy, and I'm talking, it is somebody from Iran. Like,
Wow.
like what? So I'm a horseshoer from Decatur, Texas.
exactly.
How is that even
Isn't that cool though, man?
wild?
We live in such a, obviously technologically advanced society these days, and I talk about that just not only from like on a very pigeonholed view of that, but from the rodeo side of it. When I was growing up, not everybody had a cell phone. Nobody had a cell phone in their pocket.
Yeah.
Now you go to a bull riding, and there's everybody behind the bucket chute has a cell phone out recording it, and then they can get back there behind the bucket chutes, and they can slow mo it, and they can back it up and forward. I used to have to get the tape from my buddy's mom that had a handheld recorder in the stands. I may or may not be able to find her, maybe a week or two, and then I'd stay the night at his house, and we could get in there, we'd slow mo it, and then we'd fast forward and reverse on his VCR. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, it's great. And then obviously, back to your comment about people having an affinity for the cowboy culture and being the Texas cowboy persona. I think Yellowstone has kind of helped with that, and we've all been kind of riding that wave, and which has been great.
Man.
And there's folks out there that have one opinion or the other about Yellowstone, but my opinion of it is that it's kind of like urban cowboy era,
Definitely.
8 Seconds era, where it just people are gravitating back to the Western culture, and they're buying more horses, and they're buying land out in Decatur, Texas, and they're going and buying boots at Cavender's and these places, and getting outfitted head to toe and coming out to the stock show. And so they're wanting to come out and see some livestock at our deal, or they're wanting to come to one of your shows and listen to some Texas country, and they're just eat up with it.
Yeah.
So that's great, man.
All right. Well, January 12th.
January 12th through February 3rd.
And tickets are already available.
Tickets will be available, I believe, in September. We changed that a little bit.
Okay.
At fwssr.com.
Okay.
You can learn a little more about how to purchase tickets and what events we offer, and we'd love to have everybody. And
yeah, and if anybody has any complaints about the rodeo or anything, and they direct them specifically your way.
Well,
Just kidding.
nah, that's all right. I'd be happy to talk to anybody that has a complaint. Absolutely. Please call and we'll talk it through.
Yeah.
And we may agree to disagree, but or we may agree. I don't know. But yeah, please call and
show up at your house.
Yeah, show up at my house. And my wife, she's pretty mean.
Yeah, man.
She's Hispanic. She don't put up with much, so you better watch out. But anyway,
Right on, man.
and then my little boy's got a birthday, and he's asleep over there. But Riot White, he'll be 10 tomorrow.
Yeah, he had a big wrestling match today.
Yeah, him and his brother both wrestled over in Keller today at Spartan Mat Club, and for an hour and a half. It's a takedown tournament, so they just take those kids down, they get back up, take them down again, and so they're both wiped out. And so he was so excited about coming and being on the podcast, or wanted to get on the podcast today, and he's asleep over there in the chair.
They did good.
Yeah,
They were sitting over there for about like an hour.
Yeah, has it already been an hour?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, that's flew by. Anyway, I was really interested in coming in and seeing what this format was like. I listened to a lot of podcasts.
Oh, okay.
Really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man.
It's been a pleasure, man. Honestly, been a pleasure.
Yeah, I wish we had more time. We'll do it again too, even when it gets closer to the stock show or something.
Absolutely. Be glad to come back
We
anytime.
could even get like a few people that like you work with and stuff.
Yeah.
We could have a full.
Yeah, we could have just a little roundtable discussion and chop it up, man.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing it, man.
Absolutely. Really appreciate you having me over and really enjoyed it. So
Yeah. Thanks, man.